Welcome to Just Wanna Quilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School. My name is Elizabeth Townsend Guard, and I'm your host. So what is Just Wanna Quilt? I don't know. We talk about all kinds of things. Quilting, of course, and a little bit of copyright, and I don't know, pretty much anything that comes up that we want to talk about. It's informal, it's fun. This is our 4th season, and it's all about sort of learning and exploring. So today we talk with Tara Miller of the Quilt District. She's been on before, she's a good friend, and we learn what she's been up to, including On the Road, her new YouTube channel show, and a bunch of other stuff.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good.
And I assume you can hear me because we are chatting.
Yes. You look fabulous. I haven't seen you in forever.
You look fantastic too. I do adore you. What is that about? Like every time I see you, I'm like, Tara.
Let me get my camera down a little lower. I just had it high on me because I was recording a thing for my day job.
Ah, nice.
Anyway.
So these are short interviews. These are kind of our check. What we're doing this season is just, hold on, what we're doing this season is checking in on people that we adore to see how they're doing and what's up, because it's been kind of brutal. So we're doing about 20 minutes to half hour just to check in, see how things are, what you're up to. And then I'm posting them. I'm not as good at posting at the moment, but we'll post them. So that's where we're at.
Yeah. Life is busy. Life is busy. It's hard to get everything posted.
Everything is hard, isn't it? Everything is hard.
That's all right. Well, yeah, it is.
No. But I love watching your travels and adventures, and you're doing amazing things. So let's start with the first thing for preservation purposes, which I know the answer. Tell me your name and where you're calling from.
I'm Tara Miller of the Quilt District, and I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Nice. And you, I'd like to know your story on the COVID story and sort of what you were doing, but the work you're doing some amazing stuff. It doesn't feel like it, COVID didn't stop you. You really have been developing really interesting things. So tell me a little bit about your last year and a half and what sort of happened with your world.
Yeah, thank you for that. I have been busier since COVID hit than I've been in a really long time. So I was busier at the day job, and I took a little bit of a break from some of the quilty things, in that I wasn't obviously going to guilds because guilds weren't meeting.
Right.
I was doing some online stuff, but really I wasn't as ready to do the online Zooms earlier in the pandemic. I am now, but that wasn't an early part of that. But I started doing a lot of volunteer work with the American Quilt Study Group, and joined a few committees on their board, the Showmakers Committee and the Marketing Committee. And we were tasked with developing an online alternative to our annual seminar. We have a lot of, we couldn't meet for seminar in person, right? And that's really the highlight for most of our members, is to be able to come together and do the study centers and learn from each other, and the auction and all of this that supports the group. And we weren't able to do that. So we quickly pivoted, considering this is not a high-tech group where a lot of people were not used to Zoom or any of this online stuff. So we were really lifting and shifting a massive elephant to make this happen, but we pulled it off, and we had a really successful time on a virtual seminar I think we did that. When did we do that? October. And then it was so successful that we did a mini seminar again in February virtually. And this year we'll finally get to meet in person. In fact, next week, but we'll still.
Where is it next week? Where are you, in Virginia? Is that where you're going? No, where are you?
Yeah, we'll be in Harrisonburg, Virginia, for that. So for people who don't know, American Quilt Study Group, AQSG, is dedicated to the preservation and study of textiles and the history of quilts and quilt making and women. And every year our big event is seminar, and it's a traveling thing. It doesn't happen in just one city every year. So we get to go to other cities around and really find out what's unique about the textiles in that location.
It's really cool.
Yeah. So a lot of that happened. Then later I shifted to doing some of my own things online. I also was extremely fortunate to hook up with some pretty big names and host
Like
some
this
of
was
their,
a big thing, right? Are you talking about the know-it-all thing?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about that. I like that. That's the series is awesome. So
Oh,
tell us
good.
a little bit about is it 6 know-it-alls? Is it 6?
Yes. Yes. It's 6. The 6 know-it-alls. Tongue-in-cheek name, really, right?
Yeah.
But it's Barbara Brackman, who probably everyone on this call will know, and I know you've interviewed her.
Yes.
Mary Kay Waldvogel, who did the Quilts of Tennessee and a few other books throughout the years. Lynn Bassett, who is a wonderful historian out of the New England area. Alden O'Brien, who is the curator of costume at the DAR in DC.
Oh, nice.
And Debbie Cooney, who is an expert on Maryland quilts, specifically Baltimore album quilts in that area. And Julie Silber, who has been on the scene for many years as a curator and dealer and broker of quilts. And she used to actually curate the Esprit collection back in, I think, the 80s.
Wow.
So these women I knew through American Quilt Study Group, and they had started coming together every other week, I think, at first during COVID, because they just wanted to hang out with each other on Zoom. And then they started having these conversations every week, and they were talking about quilts, and they were sharing with each other and debating things. And they thought, well, why don't we bring this to the public? So they called me in for technical assistance. And so now I get to work with them regularly. And it's the most bizarre thing that now I just shoot an email off to Barbara Brackman sometimes. It's just very weird and wonderful.
Life is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really cool. Well, it's really great, and it's really fun. And I love the interaction. It's great. It's a really great series. So again, if people are listening, it's called 6 Know-It-All. What is it called? 6 Know-It-All. Tell me what the name. I'm getting
6
the name.
Know-It-Alls. Sometimes they referred to themselves as the 6 Know-It-Alls and 6 Quilts. Yeah. But we've decided that was too much of a mouthful. So we're just going with 6 Know-It-Alls.
And how often is it happening now?
Once a month. It's once a month for what is, they come together and they record their panel discussion portion of the show. And then they send it to me and I edit it and cut out any of the bloopers and that sort of thing. And I add the intro and intermission. And then once a month we air that then they come back for that live airing for Q&A. So if you attend the live airing, you might get your question answered by one of the know-it-alls. But we record the whole thing at that point, and anyone who had a ticket for the live airing has lifetime access. We put it up on Vimeo and they can get it there. And then also anyone else who had not had the chance to attend that live airing, then they can access it through Vimeo too. So we currently have 2 of our episodes on Vimeo that people can purchase to stream as many times as they want, as often as they want. Vimeo.com.
What did you say?
Vimeo.com.
Yeah, I'm right. I'm looking for it as we speak, because I always like to make sure I understand what people say.
I'll spell it for the people.
6 No.
Yeah. Vimeo. I know you know that, but just in case someone listening doesn't.
In case somebody doesn't know.
Yeah. You can also get there by going to my website, quiltdistrict.com, and going to the 6 Know-It-Alls tab. And I've included links to our episodes there. And you can also, on that page on my website, sign up for our newsletter, where you get notified of new events.
That's really great. Yes.
It's been a lot
just
of fun.
Just go to your website. That's the easiest way to find it. The Vimeo site is a little confusing. So I would say just go to the Quilt District and you'll find a bunch of other stuff too. So it's always and sign up for the newsletter, because Tara just knows a lot and she'll keep you in the know. It's a good newsletter. It's good. It's really good. So yeah, so this is great. This is so cool. So Okay, so I have two more things to ask you about. So tell me,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're ready. You're doing another project.
Yeah.
First of all, you're doing another project, which is exciting. I don't know if you're ready to talk about it, but you also went, I think it's related to your project, to see the 50th anniversary of the Whitney show. And I'm really curious about your experiences with that.
Yeah. So I'm happy to go ahead and talk about it now. My new project. So for those who didn't hear me introduce myself as the Quilt District, that's the name of my company. That's what I operate under. And I've called my new show on YouTube, Quilt District on the Road. And I'm still putting the finishing touches on the first episode, but maybe by the time you air this, it'll be up.
I'm sure it will. We're not very good at getting things up. So yes, that is the joy.
Yeah, that's the joy of pre-taped. So yeah, that'll be on my YouTube, Quilt District. And I love to travel, right? And I love quilts. And I thought, well, now that things have opened up, I've been itching to go places and see things and see people. And I thought, why not combine all of that? So it was just perfect timing that the International Quilt Museum had that exhibition going on of the abstract design in American quilts at 50. And if I could tell your listeners what that is for people who don't know what. So in 1971, the Whitney Museum in New York put on abstract design in American quilts. And it was curated by Jonathan Holstein and Gail Vanderhoof. And it was really people who study the trajectory of quilts and quilt making and all of that look to that and the bicentennial as two of the pivotal moments in the revival of quilt making in the 1970s. Of course, other things were happening at the time too. And it's, this sort of perfect storm, socially speaking. But this was a massive, massive shift in the mindset and perspective of how we see quilts. And it put quilts up on the wall. And their only criteria for what the quilts that they chose for that exhibit were that and this is a controversial statement in some regard now, but that it looked like a painting. So we were looking for just the visual impact. So let's take all the controversy out of that, but just know
and also what a painting and what they thought a painting was in 1970, which is interesting too, right? So what the criteria of what fine art was
absolutely
in 70 is interesting, right?
Absolutely. And very pertinent to the conversation too, right? Because high art was usually made by men.
Mm-hmm. Right. We still had those categories. So I went to grad school in the 90s and we were still talking about high art and low art. Mm-hmm. I was a cultural historian and we still had those categories, of folk like that we categorized art. Yeah. And you said mostly women are folk art and low art and women
or craft
as high art.
Crafts. So it was craft or folk art. And there are some times when that is not a derogatory label, right? There's some context where it's appropriate, but not entirely. And in fact, the fact that the Whitney did this, and then later it traveled around the country and it traveled around to Europe and Japan, and that happening was one of the key things that helped to underpin the studio art quilt movement that came about just a few years later. It had kind of begun with some art quilters earlier, but it really picked up that momentum in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so, really how we look at quilts today was enormously impacted by this event. And back in, I think it was 2003, the International Quilt Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska, acquired the Holstein collection. So Jonathan Holstein still had these quilts, with the exception of one that has gone missing over the years. And then one more that was in Jonathan Holstein's brother's possession, but they ended up acquiring that one as well. And so while some of these quilts had been viewed, in maybe this one or that one in different exhibitions over the past few years, this was the first time on the 50th anniversary that they had been viewed all together in 30 years. There was a 20th anniversary exhibition the Kentucky Quilt Project put on, but it's been that long since all of them were shown together. So, and you asked my impression of it. I was I was blown away, and I was reminded again about it. A quilt doesn't have to be some kind of, something that just makes you drop down in your socks when you see it. And that did not come out right. What I mean by that is it doesn't have to be extraordinarily unique or rare or finely done by those standards of what is fine.
Or the super piece,
super,
these are masterpieces kind of.
doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be meticulously done to have impact. And that all of these quilts were made. We don't know who made these quilts. We don't know any of the makers of these quilts. So then we're back to, and how they've listed them in the catalogs is unidentified maker. And we all know that throughout history, women have been anonymous, right? And so yet again, here they are anonymous, but I feel like it's almost as if they're having their day again, or they had their moment in 71 and they're not done with us,
And how much these anonymous women's work changed who we are as a culture,
Right.
that it took time, but it did. And that's, it must feel like you've got the ghost. I mean, I live in New Orleans, so I'm very ghosty, but it feels like, sort of the ghost or the legacy of them in the room must be very powerful, I would imagine.
It is so spooky almost that you said that, because I spent a lot of time there when I was visiting for the show. And I spent some time with Carolyn Ducey, the curator, and we were walking around through the exhibit and talking about it. And I said the exact same thing to her. I said, I feel like these women are in here with us, just kind of floating around, watching how we interact with their work and thinking about, wow, finally what I did has meant something to these women, and how joyful they must feel that.
Yeah. Now you collect, I've got to ask you, because you collect antique quilts as well. Do you get different vibes from different quilts?
Yes.
Or do they? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And go ahead. You had more of a question.
I have one quilt that I've only purchased one. And it has this kind of sadness and love to it, but it's kind of, every time I pick it up, I feel this sense of sadness and love. And I don't know who it was. I mean, it was just this weird thing I bought, but I wondered if that was just me putting it on that quilt, like maybe I feel sadness and love towards this quilt. Or if you feel like they feel differently to you. Do you get a sense from the quilts that you purchase?
Yeah, I do. But, it could be me putting that on them too.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of it is which and how much of it is the other. I like to think that I'm feeling the spirit of the women because, anytime we make something, we're putting a piece of ourselves in it. And
Totally
sometimes
agree.
multiple pieces of ourselves.
I agree. Yeah.
And
right.
Sometimes it's us trying to put ourselves back together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hasn't changed. That's not new. That's not unique to us in the last 5, 10, 20 years. That's something that's been true. So I like to think that I can feel them. I have one quilt in particular that I really want out of my house.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I have it. I won't open it up and look at it right now.
Oh, interesting. I get that. When I had before the kid, I had a stillbirth, and I quilted for 4 months afterwards. I just poured myself into that. And then I had to get all of them out of the house. It was like, these don't belong here. They have to we can throw them out. We can give them to people, but this was just complete grief. And looking at them and the feel, it was, as you said, it was that pouring in. There's just pouring into the seams and into the fabric that it, and I don't feel like I mean, I know that sounds weird, but I feel like it just doesn't go away. That's part of what you're sewing into it. Even if people don't, so why is it creepy? Is it a mean quilt? Is it a creepy one? Is it mean? Is it just not, the vibe just doesn't work for you?
I don't like whoever made it, I think. And I'm not exactly sure why.
Yeah. Interesting. I once made a quilt for someone, and I really, as I made it, I just they did some really bad things. It was a teacher at Sid School where they were clearly, they were treating kids differently based on race and gender. And I was very angry when I quilted the quilt, and I thought, I wonder what happened to that quilt. I was like, you were a terrible person. How dare you treat children differently?
And don't you wonder if people that you've gifted that where those quilts have ended up, if people who are holding those quilts you made in those moments are like, I don't really think I like the woman who made this.
I don't know why I don't like this quilt. It just kind of gives me really makes me uncomfortable.
I was angry. I feel anger.
We need a scientific study of us being really mad. Quilting, measuring something of how people feel. I don't know. I always love talking with you. We always get on the most ridiculous conversations. I just feel
sidetracked
very beginning when I invited myself to your house. We've always, I don't know, I've adopted you as a sister or a niece or something. So yeah, I just
hardly old enough for me to be here.
Oh my God, I feel so old. Okay, so yeah, so we're trying to get to that show. That's really a goal. It's really hard. The world is hard at this point. But how often do you think you're going to do your show? And do you have more adventures planned? And have you already taken the adventures, or sort of where are you in your adventure world?
I have several others booked. I have also really quickly want to mention I've partnered with Quilt Mania as well. So for some of these shows, I'll be producing an article and photos for them that go along with it.
Yeah. I'm so proud of you. That's so cool.
It is really fun. In fact, so the ADAQ, the American Abstract Design in American Quilts at 50, that article will be in the September issue of Simply Modern from Quilt Mania, so people can check that out. And yeah, I have a couple more lined up. I have one that's more local to us here in Atlanta, the Southeastern Quilt and Textile Museum.
Nice.
They have an exhibition on now that I want to profile. And then in October, I will be visiting with the curator there for the Faces of a Nation exhibition. And that is, Bisa Butler has some work in that. And
are you going to the Art Institute? Are you doing the art? Are you going to the Art Institute before it closes? The Bisa Butler at the Art Institute?
Oh, I won't be able to make it up there. No. Did you go?
I'll go because I'm dropping the kid off at school. So yeah, so I'll go to that late in its thing. So we'll talk more about it when we get off camera, off thing. But yeah, I mean, I think I just can't wait to see where you go. I'm going to be like, hey, will you go here?
Hey, yeah, I'm open for tips.
Oh, awesome. Well, you are just so insane, and it's so cool to watch you grow and do stuff, and you're very thoughtful about things, and it's really fun. I just can't wait to see what else you do. It's just really, really, really groovy. You're just the coolest,
Thanks,
seriously.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's end now, and then stay on the line so I can chat with you about a few more things, and then we'll go from there. All right.
Bye, everybody.
So you've been listening to the Just Wanna Quilt podcast. This is our fourth season. Craziness. Come join us in our Facebook group. We have tons of fun there. You just join the group. Answer a few questions. It's awesome. We also are starting TikTok. So if you like that space, come join us there. We're kind of on Instagram. We spend some time on Instagram. We're not as good about that. And I don't know, come play. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you get a chance to quilt today.